Hi everyone. Before we start, I'd like to thank Bright Talk for having me and Zunesis for their partnership with HPE Aruba, and really all of you for coming. My session today is on Unified SASE Journey. I'm going to start by giving you a bit of background about me. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit about the world we live in today and what's changed, and the options we use today to secure our workforce. I'm then going to talk a little bit about how this led to SASE, before talking about the birth of Access, the acquisition by HPE, and then Unified SASE itself. Please feel free to drop any questions in the chat, and I'll try and get to them after. If I can't get around to answering all of them during the presentation, please feel free to reach out to me directly or contact Zunesis. Please add me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of content. I'd be really interested in your feedback. You can see those details in the attachments tab as well as some other links. Before we get started, let me just give you some background about me and really how I ended up, I guess, talking to you at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday evening. Okay, so my love of computers really started back when I was at university and playing games, I think like many of us. This was kind of at the time of the start of the internet. My first ever job was with a company called ID Software supporting their games. You may have heard of them, Doom and Quake. My mum convinced me actually to get a real job, and I would never be able to play games for a living, and I'm not sure really I've ever forgiven her yet anyway. I then moved on to do first line, second line, third line support before moving into project roles and then architectural roles, and then running some global teams for large manufacturing companies. The first one was a Japanese company, and I was very lucky to get to live in Japan and Denmark and Italy. I traveled throughout Europe, and if you haven't guessed, yes, I am from the UK. And then I went to work in Formula One and got to meet some of my heroes. I'm very passionate about Formula One and motorsport. After a short stint in Formula One, I went to work for another large global manufacturing company based in the UK, and I looked after really everything on the wire. I was responsible for all things IT and security, got to work on many mergers and acquisitions, divestment, plant openings, plant closures, etc. And as ransomware and insider threats started to rise, I became more and more concerned that the way in which we architected and configured our networks was really allowing everyone to go everywhere. This made me change my strategy and the way I did things, and I really wanted to remove everyone off of the network. I set in place a plan to implement a new remote access solution, one in which users just connect to applications. And then I wanted to bring that same concept into my LAN and WAN. I managed to find the vendor that could help me with the remote access solution, and that was really my first step. However, there were still some gaps within the design that I had. This led me to reaching out and starting to work with Axis, which is now part of the wider HPE family. And really, I started there to work with them on third-party and contractor access, which was a gap I had with the previous vendor that I'd chosen. I was so excited by their technology and their approach that after 25 years on the customer side of the fence, sitting where you are today, I jumped to the dark side, I'm sorry, and went to a vendor. However, in my role as the field CTO here at Axis, I still see everything through the eyes of a customer. And I think, to be honest, I always will. So before we get really started, I want to just talk about something else that I do as a bit of a side gig. I also co-founded the SSE forum with a colleague of mine, and you can see in the photo, Mr. John Spiegel, about 18 months ago. John also transitioned over to Axis and to the dark side, and he came from a large retail company based in the USA. We started the forum really to help our peers in the industry understand SSE and how it can help them with their businesses. There are a lot of acronyms, and we really wanted to break down what all these acronyms were. The forum is really vendor agnostic, and we meet on a monthly basis with a small group of CISOs and CIOs from within the businesses to discuss all things SSE and all things cyber. We also have a podcast called The Edge, which you can find on Spotify, Apple, and SoundCloud. The podcast really started because of the rise of Zero Trust. We wanted to know where it came from and why it was being talked about again and why it was so important in today's world. So we reached out to many of the founders of Zero Trust, John Kindervag, Chase Cunningham, Paul Simmons, etc. And we asked them some key questions. We wanted to understand really why Zero Trust was more prevalent today than it has been for a long time. We also have a series where we talk to CISOs about the life of a CISO, and a series on that we call the discussion series, in which we talk to a number of subject matter experts from their fields like ransomware, red teaming, cyber playbooks, etc. And we also have a series where we deep dive into kind of the roots of networking and where everything came from. So again, you'll find the links to the SSE forum in the attachments tab, and you'll also find some links to Spotify and the podcast. Really interested on your feedback. We really do it for our listener base, so we hope you enjoy it. So kind of let's get started into the meat of things. I think we can all agree that in the last few years, the technology world has evolved faster than we've ever seen before. The pandemic was a major catalyst for what is now being called the modern workplace. Users, devices, and their data are everywhere. But the legacy security systems that many of us rely on today were not designed for this new cloud and mobile world. And the bad guys know this, and unfortunately for us, they're using it to their advantage. So let's look at some of the approaches in which we can secure access in this new world. So firstly, we have the hub and spoke design. This is really a progression of the old castle and moat design where everyone was inside our perimeter, but it still focuses on having on-premise security, even though the users and their data have started to move to the cloud. With this design, there is a heavy reliance on MPLS and internal data centers. And in my experience, this model is complex to configure and to administrate. You not only need to feed and water applications to ensure they remain secure, but you also have to go through hardware renewal cycles, and you have to continually patch your systems to protect against attack. So another option is virtual or cloud firewalls. This is really an evolution of hub and spoke. And this design moves all of those kind of legacy-based hardware systems out to cloud-based solutions. This is really the solution that most legacy firewall vendors have moved to. The aim here is to remove some of the burdens of keeping systems secure. However, in a lot of cases, this still means backhauling internet traffic to your corporate data centers. This design is supposed to make things easier, but really, in my experience, it leads to further complexity and cost. Then there is SASE, which is part of SASE. And in my mind, this is the design of the future. This is delivering all of your connectivity and security tools from the cloud. And gone are the days of patching your systems. And I truly think SSE will stand side by side with you in the battle against the bad guys. So let's look at an example, because we all love a great example. So let's take the case of Nikki. Her company uses the hub and spoke design, but she is part of this new hybrid world. Let's say she works in finance, and every day she needs to access a finance database, and it's based in the cloud. So this is her journey every morning. Since she is working from home, she logs onto her laptop, turns on her VPN, and traverses the internet. She'll pass through a firewall, connect to the VPN concentrator, navigate the DDoS event system. She'll probably be interrogated by a NAC system and then work her way through an SSL decryption terminator. Be checked by an IPS system and then again be interrogated by another firewall. Then she logs into a VDI jump box to access her application back out on the cloud. So Nikki has run an IT gauntlet just to get her work done. So keep in mind her packets have likely crossed at least 8 different security products from 8 different vendors. And on top of that, it's possible that these 8 security products are not integrated. And more often than not, they'll be managed by different teams. This complexity is costly. And we all know that complexity also leads to insecurity. So the bad guys, as I said, are using these old designs and technologies as a way to attack us. They really pick on our weaknesses. Ransomware was named the top threat type in 2022, but there are other concerns for our security teams. Social engineering threats increased by a whopping 270%, and there has been a 1,500% increase in attacks against VPNs. We all know that the IPsec protocol, which we all rely on for remote access, has over 400,000 lines of code and has been around since the 90s. And this has led to there being a new bug being discovered every week. What this means is that our hybrid workforce is a huge target for cyber attackers. The remote workforce, both the employee and their doppelganger, the off-the-clock persona, are now the bullseye for bad actors. and your digital work and life personas are now at the front line. It is worth noting at this point that all of this has led to a regained popularity in Zero Trust, as I mentioned. Zero Trust is really the concept of never trust and always verify, and was first introduced by John Kindervag back in 2010. So all of this led to SASE, and now to unified SASE. So in 2019, Gartner declared SASE to be the next big thing, and it stands for Secure Access Service Edge. The concept is to distribute your networking and security technology in localized POPs close to the branch or campus sites. Security and networking would be delivered from the cloud. So let's dig a little bit deeper into SASE. When first introduced in 2019, SASE was broken down into WAN edge services on the left and security services on the right. Then in 2021, Gartner called those security services SASE, or Security Service Edge. This was caused because of the shift caused by the pandemic, and Gartner realizing that security needed a greater focus as users left their offices. SASE includes the core functions of ZTNA, Secure Web Gateway, CASB, and DLP, and it's seen by many as their first step in the Zero Trust journey. So according to Gartner, by 2025, 80% of enterprises will have adopted a strategy to unify Secure Web Gateway, cloud services, and private application access using either SASE or SASE architectures. And that's up 20% since 2021. They also predict that by 2025, 50% of new SD-WAN purchases will be part of a single vendor SASE offering, up from 10% in 2022. And they also predict that 1/3 of new SASE deployments will be based on a single vendor offering, up from 10%. So now we have set the scene a little bit. Let me talk about Axis. So Axis was founded in 2018 under a very interesting quote. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, often attributed to Leonardo da Vinci. Our founders, Dor, Gil, and Shuki, think the same way as I do. We believe that networking and security are marred in complexity. They looked at remote access and knew there was a better way of doing things. They leveraged concepts like cloud and zero trust, bringing them together in an elegant way. They simplified the networking security stack and unburdened administration from the nightmare of having to manage multiple point products and multiple UIs. They started with the foundation of zero trust and cloud delivered, and learned from the established vendors. They took what worked and did it well and fixed what didn't work. So the aim was to make life easier, not only for the end user, but also for the administrator on the front lines. And this is really what Axis is all about. So at the start of 2023, the company caught the eye of HPE Aruba Networks, well known for great network outcomes and ease of use. And Aruba acquired Axis in March of this year. Axis and Aruba are now working on bringing together a best-in-class SD-WAN solution, Silver Peak, with our, I can never say innovative, SASE solution on a market that created best-in-breed SASE platform. Please note that not all SASE vendors are equal, and some providers offer multiple point solutions that are loosely coupled with multiple UIs. And it's well worth remembering this when you're looking for a vendor. So let's break down a little bit some of the SASE services and talk about how they have been implemented. As you dive deeper into SASE solutions, you will find each solution emphasizes one of these core technology areas. It could be Secure Web Gateway, as that company may have started there. Or it could be CASB, as that was the target market when that company started. We have taken a different approach. We believe the future is about transitioning to a new security strategy based on zero trust. Only provide the resources required to perform a function and nothing more. And then vigilantly watch for indicators of change in a negative manner. So we built our platform for delivering zero trust network access. The strategy is at the center of everything we do, and it is the foundation we built our technology on. The future is about delivering secure access for applications, whether they are in the cloud or private data centers. Services must be delivered in the same way, no matter the location, and the security checks such as MFA and device posture should then be matched. We've solved this in an elegant manner for both your employees and difficult to secure third-party and contractor resources. Building up on Zero Trust Network Access as a foundation, Access then adds on features to our platform. Secure Web Gateway is fundamental to securing employees from internet-based threats. Or maybe your company is leveraging SaaS assets like Salesforce or 365. So utilize our CASB approach. How is an application performing on your network, you may ask? Well, then use our digital experience monitoring. Quickly uncover where an application issue is. So the platform was designed on day one to bring together networking and security, as I've mentioned. It is about harmonizing what in the past was a symphony that played as individuals versus as a team. In the past, the enterprise would select one vendor for networking, one for security, one for DLP, one for WAN, and one for cloud security controls. And in some cases, you would select the same vendor, but it would be a different product with a different UI. As we all know, this leads to operational complexity, high cost, and ultimately poor security design. Access, on the other hand, starts with a clean slate. It begins with a concept called adaptive trust. So instead of placing the employees, the third parties, and their devices directly on the network, Atmos starts with a series of checks to verify the identity of users, the device, as well as the state of the machine. Access then balances this with the request for the application and data. If the calculation does not add up, the employee is then not granted access. So building on this concept of adaptive trust, Atmos provides global reach with over 500 edges and services like SWIG, CASB, and ZTNA, all in a single POPs. It brings together what were previously individual point solutions into a single integrated platform delivered via the public cloud. This really enables secure access for remote employees, your office workers, and those critical third-party and contractor resources. So at Access, we believe there are 5 areas where trust should be adaptive and continuously assessed. And these are identity. So we establish identity through one of our partner IDP providers. And as the status changes for an individual identity, so will their permissions. Then there's device. The user's device posture is confirmed prior to access and continually checked. The posture can be things like operating system, is a certificate installed, patch level, is the disk encrypted, is a virus checker switched on, or is the firewall running. We ensure a device reaches security posture requirements before it can connect. And if for any reason posture changes, access is automatically adjusted or removed. So for instance, if a machine is attacked by ransomware and it's stopping the firewall service, our posture checking will notice that and you will be disconnected within a minute. Then there is policy. We manage least privileged access at scale, and any policy changes are updated globally within 60 seconds. It's critical that access policy changes should be in effect immediately to minimize any security gaps. Then application. Trusted adaptive depending on the application being accessed. For example, contacts really does matter when accessing private applications, and probably more than when accessing the internet. It's worth noting that we can configure access for all applications with holistic port and protocol support, and we can easily define and also discover applications. And then lastly, data. We can protect your data by controlling the flow of traffic. We know and can control what users are accessing and which information they can see. So let's look at a bit at how the platform works. As previously mentioned, Access believes in this notion of working in harmony. The SASE platform includes the core functions of ZTNA, CASB, SWIG, and DEM. And access is granted to the internet, SaaS applications, the public cloud, or applications hosted in your data center. So the platform will auto-mediate access at scale. There are no pass-through connections and users are not put on your network. So unlike legacy VPNs, they do not get an IP address on your network. and they cannot go wherever they want. This significantly reduces your attack surface. The system automatically verifies against the policy, as I've mentioned, and based on the user, device, and application context, and prevents any unauthorized access. It then brokers smart connections that minimize the attack surface and prevent lateral movement. Note, as I've said before, if the posture changes of the device or the user, access is adapted or disconnected. We have a single data lake for all of these services, which allows for full visibility. And all of this adds up to increased protection against the bad guys, whilst also significantly reducing cost and complexity. But I think most importantly, empowering your remote workforce. So with access, it doesn't matter where your users are or what they need to connect to. They can be in the office, at home, on the road, in a hotel, in an airport, or even in a coffee shop. They could be accessing the internet, your private data centers, the public cloud, or SaaS applications. We will secure them based on zero trust from a single platform with a single UI. So let's look at the platform. Note that it's a single UI where we can configure all elements of SASE. You can block access from risky destinations based on context. So if you want to block based on geolocation, you can. You can define access to internet and external apps in a single policy. You can leverage the rich device posture for context. As I've said before, you can check if the firewall's on, is the virus checker installed, is the machine in the domain, etc. We also leverage this concept called tagging for simplified management. So you can tag systems based on their need. You can, for instance, tag 10 file servers file server, but you can also tag one of those files for contractor access, so that you can then give only one contractor access to the contractor file server, but everyone else, for instance, access to all of the file servers. So on top of the single UI, built on top of the single source code, we have many other cool features that really appeal to the geek in me. So one of the main ones I would like to highlight is our smart routing capability. So this, I don't think this diagram really does it justice, so I'm going to try to explain. So our SASE platform, Atmos, sits on top of the cloud giants, AWS, Google, Azure, Alibaba, and it uses their strengths. And not only can our POPs be built on those cloud vendors, but we can also deploy our POPs locally in your data centers. They can be built extremely quickly at a single click and in any location where there is a cloud vendor. With Atmos Smart Routing, traffic can travel across any of their edges and any POPs from any of those vendors directly to any service, whether it be internet, cloud, data center, or SaaS. The platform will automatically select the most optimal connectivity path. So as an example, I'm based in the UK. I need to access something on-prem in the US. I may connect over to the AWS edge, onto their backbone, and traverse the AWS network to an AWS POP over in the US, and then connect into the connector on site to access that application. But if I'm accessing something in Germany, for instance, at the same time, I could take a different route. I could go via GCP over their network into a POP over in Germany and then through the connector. But simultaneously, I can also be connecting to a SaaS app that takes a different route, or to an internet site that takes a different route. So this gives you redundancy and resilience and the quickest user experience. And that's key. This offers a superior user experience, no matter where the user is and no matter what they're accessing. So as I mentioned before, I think our main aim with the acquisition by HPE is to bring together best-in-breed SD-WAN solutions, Silver Peak, with the most innovative and easy-to-use SASE solution on the market. But you may ask, what are the benefits of unified SASE? So the first is reduced complexity. For far too long, networking and security have been marred in in many point products. Maybe it's one vendor for LAN and one for WAN, as I've mentioned before, and yet another for remote access, and another one for your firewall, and another one for DLP. This legacy mode of operation is expensive, manpower intensive, and most critically also leads to poor business outcomes and security. What we need to focus on is simplicity, user experience, and scalability. If we focus on those items and add security to the mix, we can overcome the networking security gaps of our past and deal with the challenges of the future. A distributed application and distributed workforce is difficult to manage, and that is really what SASE is all about. Bring together, as I said, the best-in-class SD-WAN with the best-in-class SSE solution on the market, and the result, unified SASE. This will bring lower costs for your operation of your business. It also provides better security, and you consolidate your networking security functions. Long gone all those days of hardware refreshes and patching systems to fight off the bad guys. So I often get asked, where should my zero trust journey start? And I mentioned before that we have a podcast and that we interviewed some of the zero trust founders. And we asked John Kindervag this exact question. And his answer to me was an interesting one. He said, it doesn't matter where you start, it matters that you start. I think we all are concerned that things are going to be difficult and complex with zero trust journeys. But if you don't start, you're definitely going to lag behind and you're more likely to get compromised. So on this topic, Axis recently, in partnership with Cybersecurity Insiders, conducted the first ever research into SSE adoption. So we wanted to understand where people are starting their journey and where they are on their journey. And the report has some very good insights and is well worth a read. But for this presentation, I'm just going to pull out a few of my key takeaways. So firstly, the report showed that both elements of SASE, so the WAN edge services and SSE, are on the rise. Secondly, it's interesting to note that SSE is seen as a strategic initiative to securing the workforce. 39% of respondents viewed it as the most important part of their zero trust strategy, even over things like identity providers and endpoint security. And lastly, I think more importantly, the feedback showed that 67% of businesses plan to start their SASE strategy with SSE versus WAN edge services. And for me, this echoes what Gartner is saying, that the security team is gaining traction against the network team, and that SASE is going to be a critical part of a CISO strategy. So I guess you may ask why. Why would it be part of a CISO strategy? Well, I think one of the key reasons is consolidation. We just have too many tools. And having so many tools that just don't talk to each other creates complexity and risk. I showed this in the example of Nikki at the start of this session. The report showed that CIOs and CISOs want to consolidate the number of tools they have in use. Again, what's the reason, you may ask? Well, these types of point solutions are complex, they're expensive, and they require costly upkeep and maintenance. They are also under attack, as we've discussed. They also increase the load on your business as usual team and pull resources from critical business initiatives, which are really targeted at increasing revenue or reducing business risk. So in this world of the hybrid work and complexity that we have all around us, the CISO and CIO are really looking for operational simplicity versus the complexity we have today. So where do you go from here? I would like to make it clear that the move to SASE is a journey and that we're here to support you. Where you start, I think, is really up to you. It's all about solving your critical business challenges. And remember, this is a business challenge. Maybe your need is connecting your branch or your retail location or your manufacturing locations and improving connectivity and security with them. If so, then why not start with Aruba's best-in-class SD-WAN solution, Silver Peak, also known as Edge Connect. Or maybe your challenge is how to secure your remote workforce or third-party contractors. If so, start with our SSE platform, Axis Atmos, now powered by HPE. And if you choose SSE as your first step, then we really recommend starting with ZTNA. It really is the foundation of everything we do, and it's going to give you that quick and easy win. The idea is to standardize connectivity from private application perspective, and then you can start to layer on the other SSE capabilities such as Secure Web Gateway. As I've said before, it's worth noting that Access, ZTNA, and SWIG are integrated. They are from the same code base. They are not separate UIs as I've showed. It's a new rule and a new policy, and that's it. And once you're done, you can then standardize your access for all your internal and external apps, as well as internet access. The next step is to add on CASB for SaaS security. At Access, we really see CASB as a function or feature of your secure web gateway, and again, not a separate product. Next, take the same approach and look for the user application perspective and apply it to workloads. You can then handle that east-west traffic as well from a segmentation perspective. One of our customers' big challenges that they deal with all the time is speed. Many are trying to decide, do we have a different vendor for CASB, a different vendor for SWIG, a different vendor for ZTNA? With us, you can do everything in one place. Our push has always been to think about consolidation. There is really no God platform out there, but you do want to start standardizing some of these SSE elements. So that's ZTNA, SWIG, CASB elements, and you want to have one solution for them. As I've said before, our platform started with ZTNA, and all of the other SSE's features are just features and not separate products. This really helps our customers minimize their management complexities. Finally, bring it all together. Transform your branch or retail locations. Unburden yourself from legacy connectivity. The benefits will be lower costs, higher bandwidth, increased business agility, and lower operational costs. And then really to complete the journey, add on office security through the Aruba ClearPass technology. Go universal on Zero Trust. Dynamically segment your network and your IoT assets and your OT environment, and go full end-to-end Zero Trust. So before we finish, I want to talk a little bit about some of our customers. They're really key to us. Their challenges are very similar to yours. For instance, let's take the city of San Jose. Their challenge was the hybrid workforce. Like many in the post-pandemic world, they have embraced remote work, but they also know the power of creating a strong work culture. They adopted a 3 days remote and 2 days in office approach. And this blend allowed them to provide the best of both worlds. But if you do not have application delivery system in place, your work productivity is going to decline. So after conducting an extensive search, the city of San Jose selected the Axis Atmos as their platform. So why, you may ask? Well, there are a few reasons. Firstly, simplicity and the ability to support the challenging zero trust network protocols like VoIP and ICMP. Next, there was the server-initiated flows, allowing them to patch their remote machines while maintaining a strong security posture. The days of VPN for them are long gone. So next, there was Procter & Gamble. Their challenge with third-party access. Being one of the biggest multinational companies out there, their base of contractors and third parties is extremely high. Their need is how to secure them and maintain their intellectual property. And in the past, this meant sending out thousands of laptops to those third-party and contract users. The turnaround time to onboard a contract was extremely high with a large cost. But by moving to Axis, they were able to leverage our agentless approach. So this meant that the contractor could take their BYOD approach. And the result, more than $10 million saved per year. And their time to value went from 24 days to 24 hours. Their ROI was sub 1 month. And this is really the power of the Axis platform. So lastly, there's VisionWorks, a national optical chain in the US. Their challenge was legacy hardware. Like many companies, they were sending their network traffic back to their data centers for security treatment. They were backhauling and hairpinning everything. And hairpinning of traffic slowed down their business as well as was expensive from a hardware perspective. So by moving to Axis, they could reduce their hardware investment, optimize network flows, as well as secure their clinics. The ROI for them was also quick, and it was realized really fast within less than a week. 700 stores in a matter of days. Traffic optimized with an adaptive trust security posture, as well as visibility provided by our DEM platform, gave them wins all round. So that's it from me today. I really thank you for joining me. I hope you found this useful. For next steps, feel free to scan the QR code. Please add me on LinkedIn, check out the SASE forum, and feel free to contact me directly if you have any questions. I'm just going to check if there are any questions, and then I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I have a question here that says, what does zero trust mean to you? That's a good question. I spent some time at RSA this year, and I walked around the shop floor, and I saw, or walked around the floor and saw thousands and thousands of vendors, and they were either all AI or all zero trust. My personal opinion is zero trust is a strategy. It's not just a product. I'm not saying you can't buy products that help you with your zero trust journey, but it's not a single product. You can't just go and buy the product off the shelf. It's going to include a cultural change, a process shift. It's going to include people. It's going to include technology. It's a very different approach to the way we've done everything before. Historically, we've had everybody on our network being able to go wherever they want, whenever they want. And that was really all about ease of use. As IT evolved, so did networks, so did applications, and we've moved from the kind of single server under the finance person's desk to having data centers and then the cloud. And we've always wanted to connect people efficiently and as quickly as we could. And that meant these large open networks. That's a concern now. We have the risk of insider threat. We have the risk of ransomware. And I truly think zero trust is all about flipping that, looking at the other side of the coin, basically connecting people only to the applications and services they need access to, and not to everything all of the time. And yes, you can do that with products, but it's not all about products. Thank you. Good question. Okay, another question coming about kind of third party and contractor access, and why is that important? So as I've mentioned before, access really started with third party and contractor access. Our founders went out and interviewed a bunch of CISOs, and they found that was a use case that a lot of people wanted that wasn't filled by a lot of other vendors or by any other vendors. So they wanted to be able to give agentless access to third parties and contractors. And you may ask why. So many contractors, it's their own machines. You're not responsible for patching them. You're not responsible for maintaining them. So therefore, you don't really want them fully on your network like you would with a legacy VPN. You don't want an unmanaged, unknown device being able to go everywhere on the network. And also in some cases, a third party or contractor may work also for other people at the same time. They may have a VPN already configured on their machine. And what you really don't want is that VPN running and your VPN running, and then being connected to two networks. And there's also complexity of running multiple VPN clients on a machine. In some cases, it won't work, or you're going to need to get permissions from the other security team, etc. And that's really complex. So really, the third party and contractor use cases is, like I said, where Access started. It was all about giving that agentless access, being able to give contractors and third parties access into critical applications, but without running an agent. That is still the place we see a lot of people start the journey. I mentioned that. And really, it's because they are the high risk. So generally what happens is people will start there. They'll start with third party and contractors. Then they start to consider replacing their enterprise VPN once they see the simplicity of our platform and the ability to do it in one place. And then, as I've mentioned before, they take kind of the rest of the SSE features then. They layer in CASB, they layer in SWIG, they layer in DLP, and they manage everything from a single policy. Again, a very good question. And I think that's it from a question point of view. As I said, please feel free to reach out to me if you've got any other questions. Reach out directly, email me. You can get me at j.tilson@hpe.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Give me a follow, and as I said, listen to the podcast. And thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you found it useful.